Cowboy Church of Brenham podcast. I'm Andrew, as always. I'm here with Macy and Cody, and we're going to get into things and have a good time. Right now, at the time of recording, Cody is getting ready to preach on this coming Sunday over God's timing, coming from Acts chapter 8. So we just decided we're going to break that down a little bit. So Cody, let's I'm going to kick it to you, and let's just talk a little bit about God's timing.
Yeah. So, I think that's a huge deal. I think we all kind of struggle with that quote unquote. It's like, hey, why hasn't this happened, or why has this happened, or when should we, when will God do this? Things like that. And I've been preparing for this, and I guess at this point, by the time this thing releases, I'll have already announced it, everybody. But we have learned that my wife is expecting our first baby.
Yay.
So
Woo!
yeah.
Cue the applause on the soundboard.
Yeah. So we're starting to tell people. I forget how far she's 12, 13, 14 weeks, something like that. But yeah. So through this whole process, I just kind of got to thinking about that. Of like, man. I'm 30. I thought by now I would have had, probably be done having kids. I figured I'd already have, at least one or two, and would have been married for several years. And this is 18-year-old me thinking. And then I don't know. I just this whole process made me think of like, wow, God really does have a plan, and He's got a time of the way this stuff works out, and that at the end of the day, while it may be hard to trust, like we see that He does things and He puts us in certain spots for a reason, and it's not just a coincidence, kind of what we'll talk about here in a little while. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of jump into this, really, and do something a little different maybe this time. Like, let's talk about the passage that I shared on Sunday, and maybe we can break that down, because I think there's some kind of key points that we can see in that passage that I would say are pretty big, not detrimental, but when we really think about them in our own life, they play a pretty big part. So yeah.
Cool deal, man. I'm excited for you guys. That's a big thing.
That's really exciting.
And it's funny, like you said, at 18 years old, this is not the route that you envisioned God taking you down, but here you are, and all the better for it.
Yeah, but I think looking back, He'd probably say, as well as we could say for our own lives, is like, you wouldn't have it any other way.
Oh, for sure. No, I've got a great wife, and we're excited. We're excited about this time. When she first told me, it's definitely. I don't know how to really. I mean, Andrew, I guess you've been there. It's kind of a wild fact when you realize, like, oh man, like I'm gonna have a kid. You know what I mean? Like
it comes in waves. It comes in waves. That shocking realization and the fear of. They expect me to keep somebody else alive. Like I can barely keep myself alive, and I'm
treading water right now.
Thank God we have wives. Okay, you know what I mean.
Like y'all's wives
could not be.
What a gift.
Yeah.
I mean, y'all are like blessed.
Yeah.
To have such wonderful wives.
Well, I mean, and so are you. You know what I mean? We outed you at the last episode.
Talking about God's timing.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, speaking of.
We outed you last time. I mean, Ethan Boy is, he's, I just said his name. Whoops.
Okay, yeah.
I have to edit that one out.
Yeah, he meant to do that. He meant to name drop.
Leave it. They've been going long enough at this point, I think it can be public information.
You go.
Yeah,
there you go. Cody makes the decisions for you guys.
Yeah, apparently so.
Exactly. Hey, anytime y'all need
God's
counseling,
timing or Cody's timing, who knows?
Hey,
right.
I'm just here to serve, okay?
Anytime He's for the people.
Anytime y'all need some advice, y'all come to me or Andrew.
Keeping that in mind.
We'll keep it going, that's for sure.
Right. Right.
All right. So, God's timing. There's a spot in Acts chapter 8, and I think it really starts around verse 26. But there's this man named Philip, and God essentially, an angel tells him, "Hey, go to this certain place," with no really rhyme or reason. We're not giving any details as to why this happened or what we're not giving any details at this point of why he was headed this way. We just know that he was told to go. And he runs across this really famous eunuch that was riding down the road in his carriage or buggy, whatever you want to call it. And he gets this point, and here comes Philip, and Philip sees him, and then all of a sudden these things start happening, and the eunuch doesn't necessarily understand what he's reading, so Philip is able to be there and help him, and he gets in there, and then all of a sudden he gets baptized. He says, "Hey," the eunuch says, "Well, what stops you from me being baptized right now?" And Philip's like, "Well, nothing. Like, pull this bad boy over. Like, there's some water right there." So they get out, and he ends up getting baptized, and then from what we understand, as soon as that over, Philip is gone. He's no longer there, and I just think there's some really kind of cool points that we can learn out of there. But I don't know. I'm gonna toss it to y'all. What are your thoughts first thing when you hear that story, and when we think about God's timing? I was nice and I gave y'all a heads up of what we're going to talk about on this podcast. So what's been going through your mind when you think about God's timing?
Honestly, one of the things that comes to my mind when I think about God's timing in my life is sometimes that means that I got to wait on stuff that I don't want to wait for. Mm-hmm. And thinking about the story of the Ethiopian eunuch, like, hey, that guy came to Jerusalem and he was on his way back. He's a religious guy, a spiritual guy. He's reading God's word. He's looking for God's wisdom and looking for discernment, wants to know what does God want with his life. And clearly up to that point has kind of been left at a loss. And you start thinking, like, how long has this guy been searching? How long has this guy been waiting and wondering what does God want from me, or what is God doing? And there are seasons in my life where I've felt the same. I finished up seminary, and 6 months before I finished seminary a couple of years ago, I was starting to throw applications around, and man, I wasn't finding anything. I wasn't getting anything. I wasn't even getting calls back or emails back or anything. And so it's like, hey, I just spent 6 years finishing up school to try to get a certain job, and now I'm trying to decide, did I guess wrong?
Yeah.
Like, is this not what God wants me to do? I've lived my whole life geared towards this thing, and I spent a year and a half wondering, did I just completely miss the boat?
Yeah.
And that was a season of life where, like, hey, God's timing for me was one where he wanted me to be patient. Mm-hmm. He was preparing me in ways that I couldn't see, preparing things for me in a way that I couldn't know. And it's not anything that, like, there's no way I had access. I couldn't access that information. I couldn't see where God was going to take me. There's no way I could have guessed.
Yeah.
But man, that was really hard to sit like that and just wait and kind of be at a loss for, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, for sure. Macy, what about you?
Yeah. I kind of have a similar situation. I've been fortunate to serve alongside a camp for, I was a camper, so a long time now. But
you're getting old.
Yeah, I know.
Join the crowd.
That's right.
Jeez, don't remind me. But no, seriously, I got asked to step into a leadership role, a different role here at camp this summer, and it's a role that I have always prayed for, just to step, like, I guess you could say, higher up into that role or whatever. But it's like, okay, wow, God, like, this is a very cool opportunity. It seems like you're finally opening this door, but, like, logistically speaking, this season of life is just so busy. I'm in grad school, like, of course I work full time, and there's just other things going on in my life that are, like, keeping me really, really busy. And I'm like, okay, God, like, is this your timing? Is this something that you want me to do? Like, there's just this, like, wrestle with, like, okay, is it finally God's timing, or am I going to be, like, selfish stepping into this role because I feel like it's your timing, but I don't know. It's just a really big wrestle of, hey, like, what, like, I need discernment on what's,
Yeah.
well,
because there's a battle there of, hey, this is something you've clearly wanted for
Right.
a long time, but hey, you know just as well as I know that just because you want something
Right.
doesn't mean that God wants it for you.
Yes.
And so you're trying to balance, hey, I really want this thing.
Yeah. I don't want to make a selfish
But I don't wanna be
decision
selfish,
because
yeah.
it's like, oh, it's something that my heart wants to do, but it may not be the right time. Like
Yeah.
if I say yes to it, can I give my time to it, And actually 2 questions that I've been kind of asking myself, they kind of go both hand in hand, but and I didn't get these from myself. I was actually listening to a podcast, but it said, is this a good thing that the enemy has brought for me to do that looks like a God thing? And then the second one, is this shaping my soul or simply just filling my schedule? And those are 2 questions that I really, really had to pray about. Is like, okay,
That's
is this?
good.
Yeah, that's what I was like. Okay, I need to
Yeah.
remind myself
Well-
and continually pray over these things.
Yeah, and y'all saying both those things, like I think it does actually lead us into really that first big thing that I noticed coming out of the story that we were just talking about was essentially like I am where I am for a purpose.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like it's not just I just happen to be here and happen to be this. No, like
Right.
you're exactly where you're supposed to be on purpose. Like Andrew, I think about this because we originally talked whenever I kind of helped get you here, and I'd known you through my wife and things like that. But I mean, had another opportunity opened up when you wanted it to, you obviously wouldn't have there's a chance you wouldn't be here. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? But God said, hey, no, I'm gonna take this boy that don't know nothing about cows and put him at a cowboy church.
That's right.
And
That's right.
which I think God's got a sense of humor with that. But and same with you, Macy. It's like, hey, you are where you are for a purpose. And and I think that's I think that we have to remind ourselves for that sometimes, is because I know for me, I'm like, well, this is where I should be, and God's like, no. But
Yeah.
at the same time, on the flip side of that, I think we need to look at it from the side of like, okay, well, if I am here, what am I supposed to do with
Yeah.
with where I'm at? Whether that's a good spot or a bad spot. Some people could be in a very low spot right now, because we all have hills and valleys. Like
Yeah.
that's just but hey. I have a purpose for being here.
Yeah.
I can either soak and soul in it and think about all the wrong, or I can live at the very top and, But
Well, and that's I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No,
That's another
go
thing.
ahead.
Is like it's true. It's like it's like I am very aware that everything leading up to this moment is like God's plan. Like I don't deny that. But that's another thing that I have to ask myself is like, hey, what, if you said yes to this leadership role, why would, what's stopping you from doing that currently in your season of life, with the people around you? And so it's like, is it, if me saying no to this, there's a fear surrounding of oh man, maybe this is a missed opportunity, but then I have to think of okay, maybe this is just an identity thing of, oh, I wish that my identity was placed in that. And we won't discuss that, but it is, there's the wrestle with all of these questions. But anyways, going back to the point is it's true that God has a plan for me, and his timing right now is the timing that I should be fully present in. So
What makes it tough is, and you kind of referenced this in the questions that you were asking yourself, is a lot of times living for God isn't just deciding between something good and something bad.
yeah.
When it's that, it's usually pretty easy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of
You
course.
know,
I mean, there's no there's not, well, maybe this or that. Hey, if it's good,
Right.
I mean, if it's bad, then hey, no.
Yeah,
Right.
if your opportunity this summer was either to go work at this camp or to be a drug dealer, hey, that's really easy. I can tell you exactly what God's will is
Right,
for your
yeah.
life. But a lot of times living the Christian life isn't just determining should I do something good or should I do something bad. It's deciding between something good and something better, and trying to decide and get our own bias out of the way, and getting our own flesh out of the way is really hard. Especially, hey, we want to do things the right way.
Yeah.
And we want to do things God's way, but man, you can paralyze yourself with fear. One thing I think a lot of people end up making a mistake of when they start thinking about God's timing is, if I just sit and do nothing, God will take me exactly where I want to go.
Yeah.
Like God's not always looking for us to be completely passive, right? Like you have to take an active role in the life that you're living.
Yeah.
Like you can't just
you can't just sit and
if
not
you
do
let
anything.
life come to you, a lot of times bad things happen.
Right,
Like if you don't apply for a job, here's what I can say: 95% of the
You
time,
most likely
you're
won't
not
be getting a job.
Like, there's a few outlier occasions where somebody comes and offers you one without you asking for it,
Yeah.
but most of the time, for most of us, our experience is you got to go out and live it, and that's a tough place to be in. Is how do I know what's good and what's better?
Yeah.
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 So I think that's awesome, but thinking about that in the context of what we were just talking about, like, okay, I think we all agree, hey, we are where we are for a purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that breaks down. But as we continue to read through that story, I think there was something else that like kind of stood out to me, in that, and it's kind of the spot where, Philip's learning why he's, it says the Spirit told Philip, go to that chariot and stay near it. It says, then Philip ran up to the chariot and heard the man reading Isaiah the prophet. Do you understand what you're reading? Philip asked. And he said, how can I? He said, unless someone explains to me. So he invited Philip to come up and sit with him. And I think it's at this point where I have a hot take right here. But I don't believe there's such thing as coincidences. I don't believe there's anything as a coincidence. Like, I mean, if we truly believe God is all knowing, all loving, all kind, like he knows everything, then we have to know that, like, when he sent the angel to tell Philip, hey, go south, essentially, that he already knew that he was going to, like, it wasn't just a coincidence that Philip ran into this man on this eunuch that had like it was something that was supposed to happen. And I think that's something else that we can talk about, like, because I think a lot of times we can say, oh, well, it just by chance it happened, but no, like, we know, like, there are no coincidences.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I want y'all's your thoughts on that kind of. I don't know. I mean, this isn't a huge thing, but it's something I saw in there and figured I'd throw to you. So.
Yeah, we all are guilty of having said, like, oh man, that's bad luck. Or like, oh man, you're lucky. Things turned out well for you. You're lucky.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a question of how far do you believe God's sovereignty extends?
Yeah.
And like I'm with you, Cody. I don't think there's any coincidences. There is no good luck or bad luck. Everything that happens, this is how far I believe God's sovereignty extends. Everything that happens is either allowed or orchestrated by God.
Yeah, 100%. Like, because we can't take away. Hey, we can make some decisions to put us. Like,
that's right.
We can't. We can't drive 100 miles an hour down the road and then ask God, why did I get a speeding ticket?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't be like that and be like, well, that was just, God just orchestrated. No, like, you decided to drive 100 mile an hour down the road.
There's consequences.
There's consequences for that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I
agree. I think I agree with Andrew. It's like, it's easy for us to sit here and say, like, there's no coincidences given, like, we know each other's, like, faith in that sense. But, on the other hand, there are people who believe in coincidences and, don't.
I think often, like, even us as believers, because I catch myself all the time, like up until I really started studying for this, like, I guess I always kind of believed I wouldn't say I believed in both, but I would make the comment, man, that's a funny coincidence, or whatever. And
catch yourself saying
I'm
I'm
not saying that people who say that or don't think, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you really nail it down and you start thinking about this in a big picture, it's like, no, hold on a second. Like, I can't say that was a coincidence. Like, and the reason I think this is such a big deal is because I believe when our mindset changes of, okay, well, if I understand where I am for a purpose, like I'm here on a purpose, and that there is no such thing as coincidences, then there's got to be a reason. There's got to be something about
Right.
this right here. You know what I mean? Like, things happen for a reason, and the question is, okay, hey, do we look at it like I'll share this. Speaking of earlier, like when we went in for our first ultrasound, the doctors found something, and I'm not going to go into all the personal details of that stuff, but they found something, and we essentially had to turn back and go back to the ER, and they thought it was this really bad thing, and they ended up doing, I'm gonna say, emergency surgery. They did surgery the same day, and then they got in there and they figured it out. Okay, hey, it wasn't urgent. It wasn't what we thought it was. It wasn't this thing, which we're super grateful for. Don't get me wrong. And at first, I was like, when I first learned, I was overjoyed. But then as time went on, I got kind of frustrated. I'm like, well, did we have to do surgery right then? Did we have to do these things? Mm-hmm. And I honestly believe, like, when I turned and looked at it and say, okay, well, if I'm here for a purpose, like, there's something good going to come out. Like maybe she needed to have this thing, and we would have put it off, and it could have turned bad at some point. Why it wasn't bad right now. It was one of those deals where I look back of like, okay, well, we were in the situation, and these things happened. It wasn't just a coincidence that this doctor, I'm not going to say misdiagnosed, but he saw something and it alarmed him. And even though he or she, whoever it was, thought it was this, like, no, God allowed that to happen for a reason. Mm-hmm. And I've had to like reel myself back in from being frustrated to say, no, hold on a second. If God allowed it to happen that way, okay, then I just need to say there's a reason that there's a reason that it worked that way. It wasn't just some wild coincidence.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. To keep kind of rolling through this passage, it talks about that the scripture that the eunuch was reading and things like that. And Philip goes on and the eunuch asked Philip to explain to him essentially what this passage meant, and then Philip began teaching him about Jesus and the good news. So I think to keep moving on with this, it's like, okay, hey, we realize we are where we are for a purpose. We realize that, like, hey, there's no coincidences. But now Philip's realizing, I would think, or maybe he will, after, it's like, okay, hey, this is an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the question I have is, okay, well, I've been given an opportunity. What do I do with it? So, as far as God's timing, I don't know what y'all have to share as far as that goes. Andrew, I guess I'll toss it to you first. But like, in that scenario of realizing, okay, there's an opportunity here. What should our thought process be? How do we realize that there's an opportunity? There, instead of just dwelling on, or not dwelling on, but being caught up in the moment.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that at least I know I'm guilty of is I'll start feeling the pressure, of like, imagine Philip running up on this guy and he knows, hey, God didn't just send me to this guy so I can admire the horses pulling the chariot. You know what I mean? Like, a conversation is about to happen, and you can, it's whether you end up on an airplane sitting next to a stranger. Hey, it's no coincidence that person is sitting in that chair, right? And so thinking of it that way is like, oh gosh, I really hope I don't mess this up. Like, this is the only chance that this person has to hear the gospel, and if I mess it up, then who knows the thought process is you can't put that amount of pressure on yourself, because here's the thing. God is going to accomplish his plan and his purpose with or without you, right? And so there's an opportunity there for Philip. But the opportunity is not, hey, let's get this Ethiopian eunuch saved. The opportunity is for Philip to exercise faith and to lean on the Holy Spirit and to trust in what God is doing. Because this is true of God. He's always more interested in the work that he's doing in you than the work that he's doing through you.
Right.
And so he's bringing you to a place, giving you an opportunity to serve him, to be faithful to him. but it's because he's always interested first and foremost in drawing you closer to him. And so I think one thing that's the most important thing to keep in mind is, hey, there's no pressure on me. God is going to do what he's going to do. I can't save anybody.
Yeah.
And I can't condemn anybody. And so God is going to make what happens happen. He's just giving me an opportunity to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the opportunities that God gives us, I just need to appreciate them and treat them with joy and respect. And certainly I want to get rid of the fear and participate. But, it's not one of those things where if I don't stand and deliver here, this guy is going to hell.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Yeah. I think we definitely overplay like the opportunity in a lot of roles. And like I would even just now thinking of like the opportunity that I've been given, it's like, you're right. I'm not like somebody's savior. The role that I would be stepping in is a role to disciple others and like prepare them for XYZ, whatever. But it's like anybody else can do that role. Like it's not just me that has to be in it. And so like that does take the pressure off of myself. It's like, man, I really don't have to feel like I need to perform in this because I'm not going to change their entire life.
Right.
Like that's ultimately up to the person.
Yeah.
And in the other seat. And so, yeah, I think we overplay the opportunity a lot of times and we don't sit back and just be like, hey, like, what is God, like, what am I willing to let God do through me in this moment?
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, I had this thought sitting there. Now, I don't want to underplay this either. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
like God may be, if God really is tugging on you, don't write it off as like, oh, well, he will use somebody else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
Because then you're going to miss out on the blessing of it. But I did have this thought of like, when you talk about essentially overplaying it, as far as like the playing goes, like, okay, maybe the person that's sitting next to you, they're not there that you're supposed to have some miraculous conversation with them. You may not even speak to them, but what if that person that's sitting next to you gets up a little bit slower and they walk slow getting down the aisle and it takes you a little longer to get off the plane, all this stuff, but those 30 seconds of you being slower stopped the guy at the intersection that just ran the red light, and you were going to be in the middle of that intersection. What if, like, and I know that's a very far stretch, don't get me wrong, but what I'm saying is, like, when we look at it in that scope of things, like, okay, hey, this is all happening on purpose. Like, okay, God put this person in front of me to slow me down a little bit or whatever, not knowing what it was going to keep me from. Because, okay, well, listen, we never experienced it, so we don't have anything. But
yeah, I was going to say, like,
but had we been 30 seconds earlier and we got hit in the intersection or whatever, you take this in whichever way you want to. I'm just using this as just a small illustration. Then we would have been like, man, if I would have just been 30 seconds slower, if I would have just waited, if baggage claim would have took just another 10 minutes, I would have never been in this scenario. So I don't know. Like, as you were saying that just kind of ran across my mind of like, we often lose that concept because it's just go, go, go. And we miss, okay, hey, I'm just like, and I believe that's where we would say, hey, this is where you find the joy of life, of like, okay, I'm not stressed over all this little stuff that doesn't matter, but instead, no, hey, I really am enjoying like this part of thing regardless. Okay, it took me an extra 30 seconds. Well, if I get upset, well, what did that 30 seconds save me from? So,
Right.
I don't know. Sorry, Macy, what were you going to say?
I mean, I was kind of similar. I was just going to say it's like, even if it wasn't the scenario of the intersection or whatever, it's like, okay, Lord, what are you teaching me? Like, maybe I am having to learn patience through this guy being slow and getting off the plane or, whatever. And so it's just like, really, if it's not about somebody else, it's about ourselves and what we're willing to learn from, humble ourselves and ask the Lord to learn in that opportunity.
God's timing is not primarily concerned with my convenience.
Yeah.
Right.
But it is primarily concerned with God's glory.
Yeah.
And God is glorified when we are more like his son, Jesus. And so like that's something that, hey, you can take to the bank the situation that you find yourself in right now is a situation where God has placed you in order to bring you closer to his son.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right. It doesn't matter if life is great, if life is rough. It doesn't matter if everything is the way you want it to be or if nothing's the way you want it to be.
Yeah.
Everything is the way God has it so that you can be drawn closer to his son every single time.
For sure. And I mean, I think this next part even plays even further into it. And I love how the stories of the Bible like work out this way. Like, and that's why I love to teach in stories. Is because I think it just like when you really look at how much deeper it's okay, the face value of the story, yes, it's this, and this is what happens. But when you start getting behind and saying, well, why is this happening? The next verse starting in 36 essentially says that they traveled along the road and that the eunuch said, look, here's water. What can stand in my way of being baptized? And he gave the orders to stop the chariot, and Philip and the eunuch, they went down to the water, and Philip baptized him. And to me, like that act right there of we just talked about all these things of being where we are and, and trusting God that has these things right now. But we can't forget, I'm not going to say the flip side of this, but we mentioned it earlier of like, hey, like when God's moving in something, you can't make an excuse. Like don't make those excuses. Let's go back to the analogy of the guy on the plane. If God is really like tugging on your heart to pick a conversation with this guy, then do it. Like, don't make an excuse of not to say that you are, but like, we can use that side of things of like, well, God will use somebody else, whether like we can use that against ourselves as well. Like we can miss out on what God is trying to do through us because well, God will use somebody else to do it. And God's like, no, but I wanted to use you through this because you needed to grow in your faith. You needed to do those things. And Macy, I was thinking about this going back to you talk about like, you're talking about like your camp story, like, yes, God can use other people, but there's two ways to look at that as well. It's like he may be using you because you may make a lifelong impact on that. Yeah. But let me say this, and I think this is where that spot where we get so tied up in people is like, okay, yes, that is a possibility. But God also called you to have order in your life and to have things going on and knowing the circumstances you are right now. So just because the opportunity arises, I tell people this all the time when we talk about opportunities, not to get too far off. It's like you go to Acts 18, I believe, maybe it's 16, but Paul and Silas are in prison. And I'll never forget this, I think, as long as I live, because my mentor taught me this several years ago when I had some other opportunities open up. Paul and Silas were in prison, and the big earthquake comes, and all of a sudden, all the jail doors open in the jail, and the guard is fixing to turn the sword on himself, essentially. And Paul says, "Hey, hold on, like stop, essentially. Don't do that." And the point I'm making that is even though that the jail doors opened and Paul and them could have left and they could have walked through this open door, it wasn't time for them to walk through that door. Yeah. They still had business that needed to be taken care of right there. And God was going to use them exactly where they were at. So they didn't miss, because somebody could say, well, they could have walked right out the doors and what would God have done with them there? But Paul knew that God said, hey, was calling them not to walk through that physically through that jail door. So that has stuck in my mind for as long as I can remember, for the last probably 7, 8, 10 years, whatever it's been since my mentor shared that with me. He's like, hey, just because the door opens doesn't mean it's time to step through it. Yeah. Like God may open some doors. God may do some doors that you actually really want to walk through. You would think that if Paul and Silas have been in prison all this time, like they're ready to get out of there. But God was going to use them exactly where they were at. Right. So I don't know. That just kind of came to my mind and something I wanted to share because I do think that is a huge part as far as when we talk about not making excuses. But we have to look at both sides of that. Yeah. And by no means was I trying to call, like I was sharing. So
and I think it raises a natural question. We're talking a lot about God's timing and when we want to be sensitive to it, how we can be patient in it. What does that process look like of, hey, I think God wants this thing for me, but I don't know, or in your situation of trying to decide if if this opportunity at camp is really what God's desire is for you. What's been your process as you kind of try to walk through that and see, okay, how do I figure out? I got to make a decision.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Yeah. I mean, prayer is the most important thing that I've done. Like, I don't ever want to make a decision just based out of like my selfish, desires, whatever. And so really just praying and asking the Lord of like, hey, lay this out for me. And like, number one, what would be required of me in this role? And like pray about it, but like ask myself too of like, hey, do you have the time to commit to this? And so I don't know. My biggest thing is definitely prayer. Like I couldn't make a decision without it. But also just, I don't know. I keep going back to like, I say community, but like mentors, I guess, like, going to the ones closest around me and be like, hey, is this a role that you think that I could potentially step in? Like that I'm qualified in, and just asking there, like,
yeah.
So I'm going to stop you right there, and I'm going to challenge you in that scenario, because I don't think the question is whether or not you're qualified or not. You're plenty qualified. You're like, there's no question of that. My question to you would be this is what season has God called you to right now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because at the end of the day, like that's the ultimate question. If God has called you to a season of like, hey, you've got some big things on your plate right now that are very important to you. Well, then if that's where God calls you to, it doesn't mean that you don't love the ministry or that you don't want to do these things. But if God's called you to this certain season right now, like there's a huge part when I talk to people about rest. When God has called you to a season of rest, there's going to be some cool things and some really fun things you probably want to do. But if He's called you to a season of rest, then rest.
Right. Well, I think that's like, which it's not necessarily, I said qualified, but like, I think that is the question that I've had to ask, not only myself, but just the people closest to me that truly know me, is like, hey, getting their insight, because they may see things that I don't, just like that.
No, 100%.
And so, but yeah, to go back to your question, Andrew, like those, I would say prayer for sure. And then just like the spiritual guidance from those closest to me.
Yeah.
Those who I would say like are mentors and
that's
stuff
awesome.
like that. So
no, I think that's a really wise approach. Romans chapter 8 talks about how, we ought to pray, but we don't even know how to pray, but the Holy Spirit intercedes on our behalf. And so it's encouraging that, God is intimately aware of your situation, your scenario, and also intimately aware of His plan for you. And so, but then, Proverbs talks about an abundance of counselors, and in abundance of counselors,
100%.
There's wisdom, and so I think you're exactly right that like, as you guys who are watching the podcast, you've got situations, circumstances in your life where you're trying to discern what's God's plan for me, and how are things going to work out in His timing, and how can I be a part of that? Hey, those two things that Macy just talked about, that's the next steps for you is, hey, are you spending enough time in prayer, going before the Lord, bringing it to Him and asking Him, give me wisdom, give me discernment. And then also what are the people in your life who love you, who care about you, who love the Lord? What do they got to say about it? That's the thing. There's plenty of people will offer their opinion.
100%.
You throw it out on Facebook and you'll find somebody
an opinion for sure.
There's enough 2 cents out there to make plenty of dollars.
That's right. Right. And so it's not just asking anybody, but hey, people who love the Lord and love you, they want what's best for you. And what's best for you is not for you to always get what you want, or for you to always feel convenienced.
If you're always getting what you want, if you always get what you want, then it's not you. Yeah,
you're making some bad decisions.
Yeah, there's some. There's just no way that's. The only way that works out is if you are 100% in line with God's will. And
if that's the case, I want to come talk to me because I need some help.
Right?
100%. I mean,
let me know.
There could be no fleshly nature in that, and I don't think that's possible.
Yeah,
so,
I'd love to have a conversation with you.
Well, guys, we've been on for quite a little bit. I mean, it's been almost 45 minutes. So I think it's probably time to wrap it up. We probably could have covered a few more things, but I think we can save
maybe
it.
part 2. Who
Yeah,
knows?
maybe
you
a
go.
part 2.
There
Save
you
it for the
go.
next one. So anyway, all right. Well, guys, I hope you have enjoyed this episode. If this is your first time joining us, make sure to give us a follow and a like, and join us on Sundays. Come hang out with us, or come hang out with us on Thursday nights if you're in your 20s and 30s. It's a great time. So anyway, well, this is me signing off. Peace.
See ya.
See ya.
Y'all have a great day.